Hi, and welcome to Creating a Life You Love with Adriana, where we talk about all things mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health, and how to create a healthy lifestyle centered on the Lord. If you're new here, in 2023, I started this YouTube channel right during my breakup, and it was a really hard time. But through that difficult time, I really learned to lean on the Lord and just to find my peace and comfort in Him instead of feeling alone in my own self. And now, the person who I went through the breakup with, I am getting married to in about 2 months. And before we went into this new year, 2025, I had posted an Instagram video kind of talking about my breakup and how I was really down about it, so distraught, didn't know what was going to happen. And then God used everything for good. And now I'm literally getting married to the person I never thought I would see ever again. So today I thought it would probably be helpful for me to start from day one of us meeting all the way up until now, 2 years later. I've talked a little bit about it here and there, but I've never wanted to make a whole episode just dedicated to our story because I didn't want to bore you, I didn't want to bore you with the details. I always want to come on here and give some type of information that may help you. And sometimes I feel that sharing my own story in an entire podcast episode might be a little much, but we're going to do that today because there were a lot of people in the comments of that Instagram reel who wanted this. So, without further ado, let's go back to 2023, January. I have been going to the same gym now for 4 years. So when I met Christopher, who is my now fiance, he and I were friends at the gym. And it was January 2023 when he actually came up to me and commented on a shirt that I had. It said faith over fear. And it's by Whole Strength, which is kind of funny. Whole Strength basically started our whole relationship. But that was just one of the ways that God used a t-shirt to start our relationship. So Christopher came up to me in the gym and he's like, "Hey, I like your shirt. Where do you go to church around here?" And so I told him "Oh, I go to Calvary." And he was like, "Oh, no way, I go there too." And so we started talking. Turns out we went to the same church, didn't even know it. We just went at different times. And from this point, I didn't know, but apparently he'd seen me around in the gym quite a few times, and he had prayed that if God wanted me in his life, that God would make that happen. But a few weeks go by and we kind of start talking, just getting to know each other, talking about Andrew Huberman. That was kind of a pivotal point in our friendship where we were talking about a podcast episode that Andrew Huberman did, and just talking about all the sciencey stuff. And then Christopher asked if he could send me a sermon because we started talking about sermons and about church because we had been going to the same church, but just at different times. So we never saw each other. So we would always talk about the sermon. So anyway, he asked if he could send me a sermon, and obviously he got my number that way. And from that point, we didn't really text much, just kind of here and there. My first impression of him, he was really sweet, very respectful, also pretty calm and chill. Didn't really, text me a ton. So I didn't think he was interested. I was like, "Oh, he's just texting me sermons and scriptures. So I don't really think he's interested." And then I think a few months go by. This is April. And I was talking to him about Bible studies and about apologetics. And if you don't know what apologetics is, it's basically the study of why you believe in God. It's explaining to people why you have faith in God. That's what apologetics is. So, anyway, I found this apologetics book that was in my room, and I told Christopher, I was like, "Oh, if you're looking for a good book to read, this is really great. There's questions at the back of it, and it's really helpful." And I don't know at this point if it was me or him that suggested we go through it together, but I'm thinking it was me. He says it was him. I don't know. But anyway, long story short, we decide that we're going to do this Bible study together. And I'm really nervous. I don't really know if we're going to do this over the phone, if we're going to do this in person. I'm not sure. So I kind of just leave it up to him. A week goes by after I suggested that book, and he said he was going to get the book. And to make a long story short, we ended up going to this little juice place and doing the Bible study. Now, at that point, still didn't think he liked me. Just thought, "Oh, he's new to the area. He just moved from Colorado and he wants some friends. So that's why we're doing this Bible study together." And so anyway, during the next few weeks, I just started to see how respectful he was. He wasn't overbearing, trying to like hug me and um didn't like show me that he even liked me until the minute he said it. So anyway, the few weeks go by and I just start seeing how funny he is and how great he is. I wasn't like attracted physically at first. And when I say that, I mean like he was definitely attractive, but in my mind, I wasn't like, "Oh, like, yes." And I feel like with, girls and guys, it's kind of different, whereas guys, like, they are drawn immediately by looks. Girls, it's more character, and then once the character starts to grow, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is amazing." And that's why you can't just discredit someone, even if you don't find them attractive, immediately, or maybe they're not your type, whatever that means. If you get to know someone and you see their character, sometimes just seeing that can make them more attractive. So, anyway, our Bible study goes on and we start getting vulnerable, like talking about deep things, which looking back, I don't know if that is great. Opposite genders talking about literally trauma that has happened to them and kind of trauma bonding. So looking back, I don't know if that was the best thing that we should have done. I think that maybe we should have like hung out in groups, kind of got to know each other a little better before doing a one-on-one study. And when I say get to know each other better, I mean like in group settings with friends, just seeing how the other one acts before sharing literally our deepest secrets. So that's something I would just suggest to you. So we're doing this Bible study, and as time goes on, I start to kind of develop feelings for him, and I don't want to get hurt, so I'm kind of like guarding myself, being careful. We still weren't hugging, like literally not even touching a finger. Um, and he was just really good at like setting those boundaries. There were no like spoken boundaries. He just didn't hug and didn't like hang all over me, which that's why I thought he didn't like me because he didn't do those physical kind of leading the other person on, which is something that I only experienced in the past when other guys would hint that they would like me. They wouldn't use their words, just their actions. And then I would kind of be like, I don't know what they want here. Do they want a relationship? Do they not? Anyway, that's a red flag. If a guy is like not telling you, like, I want a relationship with you, and he's just kind of showing it through actions that are kind of misleading, wouldn't trust that. So, anyway, now we get to July 4th. And up until this point, from April to July, Christopher and I have started going to a church group together as friends. And we were still doing our Bible study one on one, but we hadn't really hung out much else besides that. Oh, there was this one time actually, I think it was a month before this, where after church, he would always go right to work and I would go home. He would work on Sundays. And I always wished that we could go to like brunch after because it would be such a good like segue of like, hey, you want to go get some food? Like we just finished church instead of like having a random day where I ask him to lunch. That's kind of like awkward, right? Because up until this point, we only were hanging out with each other when we were doing like a Bible study, right? And so I didn't really know how to ask him to hang out without saying, let's, go to lunch. So anyway, I always wish that we could just go to lunch after we did church. And this one day, his car wasn't working. And so he drove home and his car wouldn't let him go to work. And I had offered, like, hey, do you want me to bring you food? I could take you somewhere to go get something because, like, you're stranded at home. You can't go anywhere. Obviously, you need food. And he accepted. And so we went to get pizza together. We took it at the beach and we were sitting on the sand and all of a sudden it started raining. Our pizza was soggy. Everything was just drenched. And I looked over at him, and I think at that moment, it was literally like a scene from a movie. I saw a rainbow coming out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I really, really, really like this guy. I'd have to look at my notes to see exactly when this was, but I do know it was before he told me that he actually has feelings for me. So, July 4th, the reason why I know this so well is because it's the first time I invited him over to my house, and I invited him to go paddleboarding. We did that. He fell off the paddleboard. We laughed. It was quite funny. And we get back to this little July 4th party, and the whole day we were paddleboarding on like secluded islands, like no one else around. He had the entire day to tell me that he had feelings for me and he wanted to pursue a relationship. But um it didn't happen until we were around like all these people and they could probably hear everything we were saying. Anyway, Christopher just said he was nervous, but it was hilarious. So anyway, we were sitting at the table and I had my face like filled with like brisket and barbecue. And all of a sudden, he's like, have you ever thought about like getting into a relationship with someone now that you're a few years, from your breakup? And I was like, yeah. Yeah, I have thought about that. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was kind of alluding to the fact that he wanted to have a relationship with me. And so anyway, at that point, I'm like, "Hey, let's go down to the beach," because I didn't wanna be around all these people because I know what's coming and I know he's gonna say, like, "I want a relationship with you." So, at that point, by the way, I said that I didn't think he liked me this whole time. I was kind of persuading myself that he didn't, even though my friends were telling me, like, he definitely likes you, he's pursuing you." I didn't believe that because, again, there was no physical touch, nothing going on there, so I didn't think anything of it. But anyway, July 4th, finally that comes. So we go down to the beach and he basically, yeah, says, "I want to pursue a relationship with you. I don't know if we should start now. I don't know if we should just put the idea out there and we should pray about it. But I wanted to tell you that." So that's a green flag, by the way, when a guy tells you but doesn't like force it on you, right? Like lets you think about it, like says, "Hey, I want you to think about this," and like prayerfully think about it. So, July 4th, that's our first hug ever, which is like imprinted in my mind because I had never had a relationship move so slowly in a way. And honestly, during that time, I was stressing out a lot. I did not know what God wanted me to do because obviously I have this great guy in front of me. I have feelings for him now. But at the same time, I had a lot of my own issues that kept coming up and kind of making me see having a relationship through a very worldly lens. Since I had been out of my first breakup, I kind of took on this like stoic approach of like, yes, I had a relationship with God, but at the same time, I was independent. I was on my own. I didn't need a guy. And I was just working towards my goals. So I kind of had to pray about that and see, okay, God, is this really like, should I start this relationship? Now, looking back, probably shouldn't have started the relationship, but God definitely used it because we started dating in August and we made quite a bit of mistakes. We didn't have clear physical boundaries. We went from, not hugging to then kissing and, just stuff that doesn't need to happen because here's the thing, whenever I used to hear like about couples who don't make out or don't kiss. I always used to think that was so stupid. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you're literally just friends if you don't do that. But then I realized if you are waiting for marriage and that's something that you're serious about, why would you do things that are going to make you not want to wait for marriage? Like, you know what I mean? Kissing, making out more so is going to fuel those desires to not wait till marriage? And it's not that your mind doesn't want you to, but it's that your body in that moment can't really control itself. So you kind of have to like set the boundaries like way back here so that like you can't even get all the way over here. So that's something that I definitely would have done differently. Those few months we were in a relationship, August to November 5th. I think it was August like 10th to November 5th. Those were very hard. We had really bad communication. I didn't realize that some of the things that I was doing was hurting Christopher indirectly. I didn't think that it was a problem to still be in contact with my ex. Now, we just still followed each other on social media and had the occasional hello. And there was nothing that I was hiding, but just by entertaining, like, my past, it was causing Christopher to worry because he also had, some things in the past where people betrayed him, and anytime that I would let these things from my past come back, it would kind of trigger Christopher, and now I would get very defensive. I didn't like anyone that was suggesting that I do things differently. I didn't like someone telling me that it would be great if I had a mentor and if he had a mentor and if we could, learn from those who are older and wiser than us. I didn't want to hear any of that because I thought I knew what to do. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to get it done myself. I still had that very independent mindset of like, I don't need help. I'll do it myself. And this was not good, and eventually it led our relationship to go downhill. I'd say there was a lot of other little things that were causing our relationship to just crash and burn. I think the biggest thing was our priorities were not in the right place. And really, we just needed to spend time with God. We needed to heal from things. I both needed to learn how to communicate better. But more than any of that, we needed to learn our identity in Christ. And during that few months, they were very hard, but it taught me so much. And so finally, November 5th or 4th came, and Christopher and I had just finished having dinner with some of my family. And Christopher asked if we could go outside my house. My family had left at this point, but my parents were still home. So, but my parents were obviously, at my house because I lived there too. Immediately, I had this like sunken feeling in my stomach that like he was going to break up with me. And actually, earlier that day, I just talked to my therapist and was talking to her about how I think we may break up. And it was more of this idea that I was like thinking about, but not necessarily knowing was going to happen less than like 6 hours later. So anyway, he basically tells me I can't do it anymore. He's just struggling, and he needs his space to heal, and I need my space to heal too. Now, I wasn't acknowledging any of that. I was so attached to him so quickly, I did not want to let go. But I knew after crying and crying and crying and kind of staring at the wall and freezing and going into fight or flight, I eventually realized he was right and I really did need time to heal. Now, of course, by the time I realized that, it was like 4 in the morning. I didn't even realize it fully then. I was still a mess. So he decided to kind of postpone the closure of this conversation till a few days. So we took a few days and I was a wreck, could not eat, could not do anything. I had this little sliver of hope that maybe we would get back together. So we met on a Tuesday, broke up on Friday night into Saturday morning, and when we met on that Tuesday, I was like praying God would like come out of the sky and be like, get back together. But that didn't happen. It didn't happen. So we were sitting on a little park bench, um, crying and really sad because we did not want to break up, but we knew I eventually realized that, okay, this is it. We have to break up. And at that time, we thought about, okay, let's meet up in January. Let's check back in with each other and see where we're at because maybe we'll be in a better position. Now, so anyway, at that point, we're like, okay, we're not going to contact each other until January. So November to January, and we're just going to see what happens. We're going to focus on healing. We're not going to talk to any other people because that's another thing. When you break up, it is so tempting to go to someone and be like, this guy's nice. This girl is cool. Like, oh my gosh, but you don't wanna do that because it can delay the healing process, and, it's not great. Even if you don't think you're rebounding and you just have guy friends, I think having guy friends can still give you this validation of, like, guys want to spend time with you. So that's a little bit tricky situation. So anyway, going into the few weeks of our breakup, during that time, I was a mess. I didn't know that your heart could actually feel physically broken. I could not eat. I didn't want to speak. I was just so broken. But I just became very, like, calm, like, nothing else mattered. If a glass broke, I wouldn't freak out like I normally did. If I was late to something or if something didn't go my way, I literally did not care because the one thing that I was so excited about, this guy left my life, and nothing else could compare to that. So suffering really does put your life into perspective, and I think that's one of the really cool things. If you have been here since I first started YouTube, you know that when I first posted that one YouTube video, in 2023, November 2023, I was going through the breakup and I had talked about suffering and how great suffering is, and truly, it was a really good time. I look back at that time so fondly, almost wishing that I could have some suffering again, but at the same time, I'm like, "Okay, life is not all suffering. You got the good, you got the bad." Anyway, so, a few weeks go by into November. I think we're into maybe November, a few days before Thanksgiving. Christopher texts me and he says, "I don't think it's a good idea that we meet up again in January. It's making me have this hope and that we would get back together. And I don't think that's healthy. I think we need to just get rid of that completely so we can focus on fully healing and like being with God." And so I nearly spit out my food when he texted me that. I was like, my stomach just dropped because right before that, I was looking forward to telling him about all the healing that happened and what God has been doing the past few weeks and how God has spoken to me. Because another thing, suffering brought me so close to God that I could hear him in new ways. He started speaking to me in my dreams. I started being closer to him in prayer. And I honestly, um, I know that it's because I was spending more time with God and I need to get back to that. Like, I look back at that time, and all I wanted to do was read my Bible. All I wanted to do was pray. And now I would rather scroll. I'd rather go on my phone. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, long story short, we are coming into December. I'm going to inner healing. I'm going to my therapist. I am healing through things. And 2 days before a Christmas party I was supposed to go to, I go to this inner healing, and basically, if you don't know what inner healing is, it's kind of like meeting with your therapist, but you have the Holy Spirit as your therapist. So, instead of you just praying for yourself, by yourself, to God, you have someone else in the room or 2 people in the room who are praying with you, who are praying into things that you are struggling with, and they're basically interceding for you in prayer. And if they hear something from God, they'll tell you. If you hear something from God, you'll tell them. So, anyway, I feel like I had this major healing. This was December 15th. Now, my friends invited me to like this little Christmas get together put on by this family that goes to our now church. And I know that Christopher kind of knows this family, but he hasn't talked about them in a while, since I had seen him. He hadn't talked about them before that. And I figured, like, I don't think he's gonna be there. We looked at the invite list because you can see who's RSVP'd, and he was not going. So, I think we're in the clear because obviously, like, I don't really wanna see him. Mind you, I've actually seen him before this Christmas party, which I'll get to in a second, but I saw him get in his car and drive away when I was at a grocery store. I literally wanted to chase after that car, but it was only, like, a few weeks after our breakup, and I was like, "I cannot do that. I cannot be the crazy person." But that set me back really, really far. Don't go to the same grocery store that your ex is going to if you wanna heal because it's not a good idea. And then he almost saw me another time, but kind of avoided that situation. It's kind of crazy, right? Anyway, we get to the Christmas party, and my friends and I go, and I'm talking with people, meeting new friends, right? All of a sudden, my friend comes running to me and she says, "He's here. He's here." Now, I'm like so out of the loop. I'm like, "Who's here? Who?" She's like, Christopher? Christopher's here?" I'm like, "Wait, no, Christopher's here?" No, oh my gosh. So I was, like, not able to breathe, stomach dropped again, like, a panic because I'm like, "What do I say? What do I do? Do I go see him? Do you think he wants to see me?" I was freaking out. So I decide that, okay, I'm gonna go inside because I was outside, he was inside, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna go inside, I mean, and I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'm just gonna go right past him and go to the bathroom and be like, 'Oh, hey, hi, hello.'" So my friend and I decided to go to the bathroom. Now, I never made it to the bathroom. 3 hours later, I finally went to the bathroom, but it was a long 3 hours. So I get inside and I see him and he's like, "Oh, hi." So, long story short, we go outside, we talk outside for like 3 hours. The party is over. My friends are texting me, like, where are you? They knew where I was, but they were just making sure I was okay. Um, I was okay. I was crying happy tears. I was so excited. I cannot explain the joy. I didn't even know if we were going to get back together or not. I was just so excited to see him. So excited. And he was so excited to see me. And we were talking about what had happened in the past 7 weeks, and we were just so happy. But we didn't want to rush into this new excitement yet. So we decided to take a week. Now, I feel like we should have taken a little bit longer. Looking back, I feel like I should have taken a little bit longer, but we took a week, no contact, did not text each other. And our plan was to text each other Christmas morning. Well, a day before Christmas, Christmas Eve. And that's what happened. We texted each other and I'm like, "Okay, what do you feel? Should we get back together? Like, have you been praying about it?" Obviously, he's been praying about it, but what are you feeling the Lord saying? We decided to meet on Christmas morning. Now, this is really cool because the entire 7 weeks that we hadn't seen each other, which okay, saying it now, I know it sounds so short, but mind you, we didn't know we were gonna see each other again. We didn't have this time frame in mind, and looking back, could it have been longer? Yeah, it probably could have, and it probably would have benefited us. But at the same time, I learned so much in my singleness in that 7 weeks that I thought I was ready to get into a relationship. And so when we met that Christmas morning, it was basically what I was saying a second ago was the only gift I wanted on Christmas was Christopher. Like, people would ask me like, "What do you want for Christmas?" I would basically just say, like, "Christopher." Obviously, they thought I was joking, but I was serious, I was serious. So God gave me that gift, and I got to see him Christmas morning. And we were talking about it, and I basically told him that I had learned so much from my singleness, and I was in this really good place to be in a relationship. I felt like God had healed some things inside of me from the 2 days before I went to that inner healing. I felt this major healing, this major transformation. I just thought it was so cool because it was 2 days before I met Christopher. God provided this major healing for me. So when we met on Christmas Day, that's basically what I told him. So New Year's Day, I think we officially went on like a date, and that was the start of a new beginning. And honestly, I had a lot of anxiety. I'm not going to tell you that it was all sunshine and rainbows because I was really, really anxious. And after talking with people about it, I realized that I was so anxious because I was worried that the same thing would happen again. I was worried that I was going to break up again and that I was going to let my friends down, my family down. I was going to like kind of have this sad image of God, of like God giving me this gift and then taking it away. I was so worried of that happening that I was anxious. And I remember it was New Year's Day, and Christopher and I had been spending the day together, and that night I kind of told him like, "Hey, I've been feeling anxious like the entire day." And he told me, "I actually felt like I should have prayed like hours ago about that, but I didn't." And he's like, "Let's pray now." So we prayed about it, and instantly I felt like this anxiety go away, and just I felt this peace. And it was truly so relieving. A few months go by and the anxiety starts to go away. It starts to dwindle. I love how I'm like literally 30 minutes into this and I still haven't got to the whole year. This might be another episode. I don't know. One day I'll have Christopher come on and talk about this, but he's not really a social media guy, which is kind of cool. When I first met him, he has no social media, and I was like, I admire that because I have social media, you don't. It's like this good balance. Anyway, every girl who's on social media needs a guy who's like offline, under a rock, living under a rock. My camera card just told me that it was full, so I had to change that. We've been talking for quite a bit. Anyway, gonna try to pick up the pace a little bit. So we're now a few months into our relationship, and we were talking about marriage. And we obviously knew getting into this relationship that we were intending this to go towards marriage. And unless something went completely wrong and God did not want us to end up together, then we weren't going to get married. But it seemed from what we had been praying about that God was confirming that his hand was in this relationship. And so we were talking about marriage and kind of like a timeline. And we in our minds think at a year, you should probably know if you want to marry the person. Honestly, like probably 6 months, you should know, like if you're intentionally dating them and intentionally asking questions at 6 months, you should probably know, like, this is a person I would want to spend my life with. It may take longer, it just depends on your relationship and your level of deepness. Some people may not be as vulnerable as others. I was very vulnerable. He was too. We were like, just open the can of worms, anything the other needed to know, we would be open about it. But anyway, in March we started talking about marriage, and fast forward to the summer, we started to have difficulties. And when I say difficulties, let me go back. Like I said, when we got back together in January, I had thought that I was in a great place to be in a relationship. Now, here's why. I was doing so well in my healing journey with God. I thought that once I got into a relationship, there would be nothing else that would come up. Like, I thought maybe a few things here and there, but I thought I had worked through all the big things. Now, I'm very mistaken because getting into a relationship actually showed that I have more character flaws. I am not patient. I am not calm, cool, and collected. I'm just not. So, this relationship showed me that I had a lot of issues with control. And Christopher and I have gone to visit his family in Colorado quite a few times, and I didn't realize how much I need my consistency and how much I hate change. And so when we were going on this trip to Colorado in the summer, I had already been once before, but we went again. I was really struggling down to, things that I couldn't eat like normal at my house in Colorado. I had to eat differently. I had to, have a different routine. It was just a different environment there. And I honestly struggled a lot with anxiety, and then this kind of caused our relationship to struggle. Now, there was this big thing that happened in the summer that kind of made our relationship like kind of brought back triggers. Um I deleted numbers on my phone from guys that I used to talk to, even if they were just friends and I maybe had a hunch that they had feelings for me. I just deleted their number. I was like, I don't need this. I haven't talked to them in months. I don't want to entertain this. I just thought that that would be healthy. Um, just to have like a clean slate. Now, I didn't think that they would text me because it had been months, like 8 months since I had talked to a single guy, Um, but Christopher and I are driving to church in Colorado with his family, and an unknown number actually texts me and says, "Hey, how are you doing?" with a smiley face. And then it says, "Blank liked your message." And now I open the message up. I don't know who this is from because it's an unknown number. And I deleted all my messages on my phone. I went through and just deleted basically everything because I didn't want any reminder of my past. I didn't want to be tempted to go through old text messages, like none of that. So I just deleted everything. And not that I was hiding anything, I just didn't want to have that reminder of the things that I used to entertain. And not that it was bad, I don't want to have that. So anyway, this person texted me, and Christopher saw that there were no text messages, but the notification said so and so liked this text message, but there were no text messages. So all of a sudden in his mind, he starts freaking out, but we can't talk about it because his parents are right there. He's right next to me, and he can't really say anything. So he shuts down. And he's taken back to where he was betrayed in past relationships. And I'm telling him like, "Oh, it must like, I don't know whose number that is. Maybe it's one of my friends, but I went through and deleted all my numbers." So, I was trying to kind of tell him that, but I couldn't really talk about things openly. Like his parents were right there, didn't want it to be awkward. So we get to church and he's just shut off from me. He doesn't want to like hold my hand because when he gets anxious, he just doesn't want people touching him. When I get anxious, like I want to hug. So we're very different in that way. But he's really anxious by that, kind of shuts down for the rest of the day and really goes through a hard time of like um yeah, just having those triggers bring up a lot of emotions in him. And then I was struggling as well because I was like, I tried to do things right and I can never do anything right. So here I am thinking like I can never do anything right. He's gonna be like this our whole relationship. I'm gonna have to walk on eggshells. And then he's over there thinking like, can I trust her? Can I trust her? Like, what is this? And so later that day I try to explain everything and he understands it, but it's not getting through to him. And so this was a little bump in the road, but we get home from that trip and we talk about it and we pray a lot. And he doesn't have the same feelings that he did. Because honestly, there were points where, for each of us throughout the past year, that it had been so hard to deal with like triggers and things from our past that sometimes you question and you're like, is this pain worth being in a relationship? And when I say pain, I don't mean the other person is causing you pain directly. I mean, when you're in a relationship, you're in a vulnerable state. You're more vulnerable with this person that sees you all the time and hears your deepest thoughts, right? Or knows what you're thinking, and because of that, you're going to have some issues that arise and you're going to have to work through healing. And so it's not that Christopher and I were intentionally causing each other hurt, but it's that our own brokenness was causing pain and causing difficulties in the relationship. And that's the same thing that happened when we went through before we went through our breakup. But we were stronger this past year in the way that we brought it to God instead of running from our problems. We decided to bring them to God and then come together to work through these issues. Now, obviously, when you're in a relationship and you're not yet married, I think you have to be careful with like emotional boundaries still, because you don't want to make the other person your god. You don't want to make them an idol where you're never going to God, but you're always going to them first to help with your problems. Even when you're married, that shouldn't be the case either. But I felt that start to happen last year, so I had to be careful and be mindful of that. But after the Colorado trip, we worked through a lot, and Christopher started getting inner healing as well, and was able to talk with people and have other people pray for him. And that's what's been so great about finding like a church community. We've had other people like walk with us and pray with us about things that have weighed us down. And so Christopher had this massive healing, and just the past few months I've seen him just grow into like this leader and someone who is positive and who looks at the glass half full. And I admire that so much that it is making me realize that I can do more in my relationship with God. And when I say more, I don't mean more just to check it off the list, but I mean more so that I can live the life that God has set before me. And so, honestly, I think the biggest thing when you're choosing someone you want to spend the rest of your life with is, who is going to help me grow into the person that God wants me to be? And can I help that person grow into who God wants them to be? And I feel like Christopher and I both answer that question for each other. I heard recently on a dating podcast, actually, I think it's called Heart of Dating. Yeah, I forget what episode it was, but there was someone saying that the key factor you want in a relationship is if the other person is willing to grow. If they're willing to grow, that is great, because you can have someone with problems like, they have angry outbursts sometimes. I'm not saying like abusive or violent, but like me, I have a lot of emotions. I am sometimes a little bit all over the place, and Christopher could see that and be like, I'm gonna run. Like, I do not want any part of this craziness. I want someone who's stable. Don't know if there's a woman who is completely stable because, hormones just all over the place. But he could be like that, but instead he sees my desire to grow. Now, I'll admit, sometimes I'm kind of stagnant. I kind of stay in a rut. And he comes alongside me and picks me up and helps me find my way back to, okay, you're going to spend time with God in this way. You're going to, do these things that can help you get out of that rut. So he's very encouraging in that way. So, long story short, went back to Colorado in October, and October 5th, he proposed to me. And that trip, I also had anxiety, by the way. I just do not do well with traveling. So the day before he was going to propose to me, I was like freaking out 'cause I'm feeling sick and I'm not feeling well and I'm out of my routine. And I was just like so worried. This is something I'm still working on. I'm working on letting go of little things like where I'm going to eat and, what I'm going to do that night and what the plans are going to be. I am not a very flexible person and I'm working on that. Um, and God is honestly teaching me that a lot because, like, tonight I was supposed to record my podcast like 5 hours ago, but now it's 10 p.m. and I'm just finishing this up now because I had some little technical difficulties. So, anyway, where was I? Yes, Christopher proposed to me. So that was October 5th. We were supposed to go to breakfast with friends that morning, and they were actually part of this plan where they were going to say, "Oh, no, we actually cannot go to breakfast until an hour after the time we said. So maybe you guys, if you're already out, you can go to a coffee shop or go on a little walk." So they gave us suggestions. Anyway, Christopher knew which one I was going to pick. I was going to pick the walk because we already had coffee that morning. So we went on a walk, and lo and behold, 5 minutes into our walk, I see candles, all these things, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, oh my gosh. And it was beautiful. I honestly was a little bit distracted half the time he was reading a letter to me that he wrote. It was a beautiful letter, but I was like, wheels were spinning in my head trying to figure out how they pulled this off and who was a part of this plan. And oh my gosh, his mom was leaving the house to go help her sister with something, but actually she was going to help set up this proposal. It was just all so sweet. Um, but anyway, yeah, we get engaged October 5th. And oh, I forgot to go into this point of July. In July, we had started talking about marriage seriously, like, okay, in the next few months. And so he started getting a ring made for me. And we started talking about that. And then I think it was August, we started premarital counseling. I feel like premarital, usually people say, like, do it after you get engaged, but I think you should do it before you get engaged because if anything comes up in premarital and it's like a major red flag, at least you don't have to call off a whole engagement. You can just break up, you know? Um, Not that that's giving you an out to like not deal with difficulties, but in premarital, we went through a lot of things like finances, how we're gonna raise children, gender roles, what you think about that, what you expect of the other person, communication styles, all the things. We went over all of that. And so by the time we got engaged, we're like, oh, we're good, we're fine. Like, we don't have to worry about this. No, just kidding. The work is never done. So, anyway, so the past few months we've been wedding planning, and let me tell you, I don't love wedding planning. Now my mom is doing most of it because she's really good at planning, but I'm not someone who wants like a lot of crazy stuff at their wedding. I want it to be chill, like low key. I don't want to be the center of attention, even though that's kind of the whole purpose of a wedding. Anyway, so I've had a lot of challenges with being okay about people doing things for me and planning things for me and wanting to celebrate me and Christopher, obviously, but I think the wedding is really for the bride as well. Anyway, um, to make a long story short, wedding planning has been good. It is almost over. The wedding is in March. So I know pretty soon. We had like 5, 6 month engagement. I didn't want a long engagement because I feel like in my brain, the more time I have to put something together, the more anxiety I'm going to have because I'm going to be thinking about it every day for a whole year. I don't know how people do year engagements or more. Like, I don't know. I really don't know. So, anyway, after talking for literally an hour, I think that's the story of our relationship. Not the full story by any means, because there's a lot of like certain events, certain things that happened, but I hope that answers any questions you may have about our entire relationship timeline. So, to summarize, and just to go over things that maybe I would have done differently, things that I've learned from now, when we met in January 2023, I would not have started a Bible study with a guy one on one. I probably would have done it in a group setting to get to know how he is around other people. Now, turns out he was a really great guy, so it's okay. Um, but I would have done that differently. When we then confessed our feelings for each other in July, that was wonderful. But I wish I would have had a mentor at that time to help me and guide me when I first started our relationship in August because it was a train wreck, you know? It was a train wreck. And yeah, but God used it. And honestly, do I know if that was God's plan all along to have us break up? Maybe, because honestly, that breakup really grew me in like ways I can't even explain. It was incredible, right? So I would have done differently, probably going into our second relationship. I would have probably waited a little bit longer. And I don't know, looking back, I say like, okay, I could have waited longer. But at the same time, in January, I felt that God had healed me from so many things that I didn't think that I thought I was ready to be in a relationship. Now, I think I was for that time, and I think God has shown me so many areas of my life that actually need him to be in it. Like I am still actively working on what does healthy productivity look like? What does it look like to not be so obsessed over being productive and getting done tasks, but at the same time not being lazy? Like, I'm still learning and growing through these things. And you don't need to be perfect to be in a relationship. I think the main thing, I think you need to have a foundation with God before getting in a relationship. I think that's really important. And that's what the 7 weeks of singleness taught me from November 5th to, I don't know, January 1st. It taught me that, and it was definitely a really hard time, but it taught me so much. And then our whole year from January to, well, now January, I've learned a lot about a relationship, and I'm definitely no expert. I have read a few books here and there about marriage, but that's about it. So I don't want to come on here and give marriage advice just yet. Maybe ask me in like 20 years or like, when I have it a little bit more down. And if there's anything I would have done differently between January and January 2024 and 2025, there's probably a lot of things. There's probably a lot of little things, things that I wish I wouldn't have said, ways that I would have handled things better. But honestly, you learn, you live and you learn. And I'm so grateful that Christopher has been so patient with me, especially since I am younger than him and don't have as much experience as him in certain life skills. And he's been very patient and just like helping me learn and never putting me down, always encouraging me and lifting me up. That's something that I love about him. He's very encouraging. And I've seen that since he's gotten healing from deep wounds, his capacity to love has been greater. So since I would say maybe like August, his capacity to love has been so much more, and I've just felt the love. And I know that when I have healing from certain things, I will be able to love him even deeper, because I think right now, because he has space in his heart of like no more, wounds, he's able to love better. And I don't have that quite yet. I know there's still things that I need to work on, but I'm very grateful that he's been patient and just always there for me. Always wanting to, like, if I am struggling with something, he cares to listen and he wants to fix it. Now, sometimes I know girls, like, we just want to cry. We just want someone to listen to us and not fix our problems. So he's also good at that, also great at listening. But when I need someone to help me navigate my thoughts, like, he is there and he cares and he really wants what's best for me. So, moral of the story, well, there's a lot of key points that you could probably take away from this. I hope you don't take away that you should get back with an ex just because I said the story. Um, it's not in every case that you should get back together with an ex. I think it depends on the reason why you broke up, and the reason why you're getting back together. Are you getting back together out of convenience? I don't think that's good. I think you should have a period of like not talking to the other so you can heal. And I don't think you should get together out of fear that you're never going to find anyone better again. I think getting back together with someone you used to be in a relationship with takes a lot of prayer and a lot of discernment. And honestly, there are some times where I think I hear the Lord and I'm like 99% sure it's God. So I step out in faith, and I don't think the Lord is going to be like, "How dare you? You didn't get it exactly right." if he sees your heart, he is going to just redirect you a little bit to the left. And so, Christopher and I, from the very beginning, put our relationship on an altar of like, Lord, if you don't want us to be together again, we'll gladly break up. Obviously, not gladly. We'd be really, really heartbroken for the second time, but we would do it if the Lord wanted us to. And we have had to pray through a lot of moments that there were hardships of um, working through healing. And there was this amazing quote that I heard, your deepest wounds come from people, but so does your deepest healing. And just this idea of the things that have happened to me in my past, the things that have happened to him in his past have happened from other people, other like humans. But we now have this ability, being so close with one another, to actually bring healing into one another's lives. And I think that's really, really cool. So, with all of that being said, I hope there was something you could take away from this. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. But until then, I'll be kind of keeping you updated on wedding planning. I'm not someone who will probably be sharing a ton about it, unless if you want to know certain details, ask me and I'm an open book, but I won't be posting 24/7 because wedding planning is already so much. I don't know how people record the whole process. So anyway, with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful week. And also, it's almost February, which means I'm going to be having this February challenge. More details coming on my Instagram. So please follow me there if you haven't already. Make sure to follow the podcast, subscribe, and I hope that we can continue to create a life that we love together. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.